The year is 2024. We live in a world saturated with information. Yet, some narratives refuse to be silenced, demanding not just our attention, but our action. To understand the Black Lives Matter movement, we must first understand the context from which it emerged. The roots of this movement run deep, entwined with centuries of oppression, discrimination, and systemic racism. For generations, these injustices were met with silence, brushed under the rug of societal acceptance. The Black Lives Matter movement did not emerge in a vacuum. The movement is often misunderstood, misrepresented, and even demonized. At its core, it's an affirmation. It is a declaration that Black lives hold inherent value and deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. The movement is more than just a hashtag. It is a movement that encompasses a wide range of experiences, perspectives, and approaches. The movement found its modern genesis in a hashtag. In the summer of 2013, following the acquittal of George Zimmerman, Alicia Garza took to Facebook to express her grief and anger. Patrisse Cullors saw Garza's post and added the hashtag #BlackLivesMatter. Opal Tometi joined Garza and Cullors, forming the nucleus of a global movement. The hashtag transcended traditional activism, providing a virtual space for Black people and allies to connect and organize. Following the deaths of Michael Brown and Eric Garner, protests erupted across the United States, demanding justice and accountability. At the heart of the movement are three Black women: Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi. Their leadership, rooted in Black feminist principles, has been instrumental in shaping the movement's values, strategies, and goals. The movement acknowledges that Black women face unique forms of oppression at the intersection of race and gender. The movement's focus on intersectionality is a testament to the vision of its founders. The movement emerged in the age of social media. The hashtag #BlackLivesMatter became a viral phenomenon, spreading awareness about police brutality and systemic racism. Social media platforms provided a space for activists to share their stories and document instances of injustice. The speed and reach of social media have allowed the movement to respond rapidly to instances of injustice. The summer of 2014 became a turning point for the Black Lives Matter movement. The death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, ignited a firestorm of protests. Ferguson became a microcosm of the systemic racism that permeated American society. The protests in Ferguson were not just about Michael Brown, they were about a system that had failed Black communities for generations. Beyond the hashtag, the power of collective grief and resilience is profound. The movement is often characterized by its protests and demands for justice. But beneath these outward expressions lies a deep well of collective grief, a shared experience of trauma that binds Black communities together. The movement is about demanding a world where Black lives are valued and protected. It's inextricably linked to the names of those whose lives were tragically cut short by police brutality and racial violence. Each name represents a unique individual with their own story and dreams. The names of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, and countless others have become rallying cries for justice. The movement demands that we remember these names and honor their memories by fighting for a world where their deaths are not in vain. It has had a profound impact on public discourse and policy. The movement has shifted the conversation, forcing individuals and institutions to confront uncomfortable truths about racial inequality. One of the most significant impacts has been its ability to shine a spotlight on police brutality and the urgent need for police reform. The increased awareness generated by the movement has led to calls for policy changes aimed at addressing racial disparities. The movement has challenged governments, institutions, and corporations. In the wake of George Floyd's murder, Many corporations faced mounting pressure to take concrete actions to address racial inequity. Some corporations responded by pledging financial commitments to organizations fighting racial injustice and supporting Black-owned businesses. The movement highlighted the need for transparency and accountability, urging corporations to implement measurable and sustainable changes. The Black Lives Matter movement has had a profound impact on the field of education. The movement has sparked a national conversation about the importance of inclusive education. One of the most significant impacts has been the increased demand for curricula that accurately reflect the history and contributions of Black people and other marginalized groups. The movement has highlighted the need to address systemic racism within school systems and create more equitable and inclusive learning environments for all students. Resonates across borders. Originating in the US has sparked a global reckoning with systemic racism and police brutality. Protests have erupted worldwide, from London to Tokyo, uniting people against racial injustice. This global solidarity highlights the interconnectedness of struggles against oppression. George Floyd's death in Minneapolis catalyzed this global awakening. Images of Floyd's murder, shared widely, sparked global outrage and grief. Protesters in cities worldwide demanded justice for Floyd and an end to racial injustice. This response underscored that systemic racism is a global issue. The movement's global reach shows the power of shared experiences in the fight for human dignity. Solidarity in action. From London to Sydney, a world awakens. The global impact extends beyond symbolic gestures of solidarity. In many countries, the movement has sparked concrete actions and policy changes aimed at addressing systemic racism and promoting racial justice. This includes efforts to reform law enforcement practices, address racial disparities in healthcare and education, and promote diversity and inclusion in all aspects of society. It empowered activists and communities around the world to challenge their own governments and institutions, demanding accountability and concrete action to address racial injustice. In the United Kingdom, the Black Lives Matter movement has reignited calls for police reform and an end to racial profiling. It's also drawn attention to the Windrush scandal, in which hundreds of Commonwealth citizens, many of Caribbean descent, were wrongly detained, denied legal rights, and deported from the UK. The scandal exposed the deep-seated racism and discrimination within the UK immigration system, prompting calls for an overhaul of immigration policies and practices. In Australia, the movement has amplified the voices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities who have long faced systemic racism and discrimination. It drawn attention to the overrepresentation of Indigenous Australians in the criminal justice system, the high rates of Indigenous deaths in custody, and the ongoing impacts of colonialism and dispossession. Challenges and criticisms. Navigating cultural contexts and accusations of importation. The movement's global reach has not been without its challenges and criticisms. One of the main criticisms leveled against the movement is the accusation of importing an American issue into other cultural contexts. Critics argue that the movement's focus on American experiences of racism ignores the specific histories and manifestations of racism in other countries. They contend that the movement's tactics and rhetoric, while relevant in the United States, may not be appropriate or effective in other cultural contexts. Another challenge faced by the movement globally is the diversity of experiences and perspectives within Black communities around the world. While the movement is united by a shared commitment to racial justice, there are inevitably differences in how racism is experienced and understood in different cultural contexts. It has had to navigate these differences, finding ways to be inclusive of diverse voices and perspectives while maintaining a clear and unified message. Beyond the hashtag practical steps towards racial justice, while rooted in protest and demands for systemic change, also calls for individual action and responsibility in the fight against racism. It's not enough to simply agree that Black Lives Matter. The movement challenges us to translate our words into tangible actions that contribute to a more just and equitable society. This section outlines practical steps individuals can take to move beyond the hashtag and actively engage in dismantling systemic racism. One of the most impactful ways is to educate yourself about the history and ongoing realities of systemic racism. This includes understanding the historical context of racial injustice, from slavery and Jim Crow to mass incarceration and police brutality. It also means engaging with contemporary issues, such as racial disparities in healthcare, education, housing, and employment. Resources like books, documentaries, podcasts, and articles by Black scholars and activists provide invaluable insights into the lived experiences of Black people and the systemic barriers they face. Educate yourself and others. Confronting unconscious bias and seeking knowledge. A crucial step towards dismantling systemic racism lies in acknowledging and addressing our own unconscious biases. Unconscious bias refers to the implicit associations we hold about different social groups, often based on stereotypes and prejudices we may not even be aware of. These biases can influence our perceptions, decisions, and interactions with others, perpetuating inequalities even when we have good intentions. Recognizing our own unconscious biases requires introspection, self-reflection, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. There are numerous resources available online, including implicit bias tests, that can help us identify our own biases. Engaging in honest self-reflection, seeking feedback from trusted friends or colleagues, and educating ourselves about the nature of unconscious bias are essential steps in this process. Amplifying marginalized voices, listening, learning, and becoming an ally. The movement emphasizes the importance of amplifying marginalized voices, of listening to and learning from those who have been historically silenced and oppressed. Becoming an ally in the fight against racism requires a shift in perspective, from centering our own experiences to actively seeking out and uplifting the voices of those who have been marginalized. Listening is a powerful act of allyship. It means creating space for Black people and other people of color to share their stories, their experiences, and their perspectives without interruption, judgment, or the expectation that they educate us. It means approaching these conversations with humility, empathy, and a genuine desire to understand. Learning from marginalized voices is equally important. The long arc, continuing the fight for justice. This is not just a moment in time, but a continuation of a centuries-long struggle for liberation and equality. From the streets of Ferguson to the global outcry for George Floyd, the demand for recognition, dignity, and the right to exist without fear has echoed through time. The arc of the moral universe, while long, does not bend towards justice automatically. It requires constant vigilance, unwavering activism, and a collective commitment to dismantling oppression. Hope in action, building a future where Black lives truly matter. The movement, born out of pain and righteous anger, carries a profound sense of hope. It's a hope rooted in the belief that a different world is possible, where Black lives are valued and celebrated. This hope is an active force, fueled by activists, organizers, educators, and everyday people. Building this future requires dismantling racist ideologies and systems. It demands moving beyond performative allyship and engaging in the work of dismantling white supremacy. This includes challenging our biases, confronting racism, and advocating for racial justice. The future we strive for is one where Black children grow up free from fear and discrimination. It's a future with equitable access to education, healthcare, housing, and economic opportunities. Building this future requires action, investing in Black communities, and supporting Black-owned businesses. The Black Lives Matter movement has ignited a global conversation and inspired a new generation of activists. As we reflect on the journey of the Black Lives Matter movement, we recognize the incredible strides made and the challenges that remain. From igniting a global conversation to inspiring a new generation of activists, the movement has shown the power of collective action and the importance of standing in solidarity. It's not enough to be aware. We must be active participants in the fight for racial justice. This means educating ourselves and others, supporting Black-owned businesses, advocating for policy changes, and standing up against racism in all its forms. Every action, no matter how small, contributes to the larger goal of building a future where Black lives truly matter. Together, we can dismantle racist ideologies and systems, ensuring equitable access to education, healthcare, housing, and economic opportunities for all. Your voice and your actions are crucial. Let's continue to push forward, united in our commitment to justice, equality, and a future where hope becomes reality. Join us in supporting the Black Lives Matter movement and be a part of the change we need to see in the world. Thank you for watching, and remember, Black Lives Matter today, tomorrow, and always. Black Lives Matter Take action support racial justice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content on social justice and ways you can make a difference. Together we can build a better future.